This is a story of ships and traders and seafaring men, of fishermen, working stiffs, high rollers, a tale of lives and loyalties in transition. And it's about a street called the Embarcadero, the place of embarkation, cutting a 3-mile half-compass curve where San Francisco touches the bay, from Fisherman's Wharf to China Basin.
At the end of the bay, sail voices in the wind, fog slow spiral under the bridge, he's seen contenders over all, he remembers the rise and fall.
For 230 years it had been a street of the sea. Now that tie is all but broken.
He remembers 60 years past, cargo moved by the vanishing mast, time's cutting through him like a knife, silver blade clear as ice.
This is a mosaic of impressions, a backward glance, a questioning look ahead. We'll go to the piers and wharves of the Embarcadero, walk among its ruins and ghosts, visit places where the past is only a reflection and confidence rides a new flood tide, others where the current of tradition runs deep and the hardest struggle is toward tomorrow. We'll venture beyond the Embarcadero's end to the docks and the yards that even most San Franciscans have never seen. And we'll meet remarkable men whose fortunes have been molded by the waterfront of San Francisco.
Embarcadero Blues. It was right here at the very same pier he found his first clues of the work that has disappeared in Embarcadero Blues.
As far as my own personal feeling, I have to say I really loved this job when I came to it. I liked the men. I got on with the men. I mean, it was, to me, it really made my life. And that is changing. And it affects all of us personally. Fact is, I think that in some measure, the longshoremen don't feel too much at home anymore on the waterfront. You know, that's kind of strange, but that's true. Boy, he's like an endangered species, you see.
Meet one of the endangered species, Herb Mills, longshoreman. He holds a doctorate in political science, to which he will reluctantly admit he taught at UC Berkeley for a couple of years that he's trying to forget. And he comes from a family that arrived on the Mayflower, a fact he would prefer to ignore. What Herb Mills is proud of is his years as a longshoreman. He's Secretary-Treasurer of ILWU Local 10.
Some years ago, there was a very rich and vibrant social life on the waterfront. It was dotted with cafes and restaurants and movie houses that never shut, and pool halls and inexpensive hotels, the missions, storefront churches, and so on. That's, for all practical purposes, totally disappeared. There is no neighborhood any longer. And that, of course, is partly a function that the piers that supported those neighborhoods have also, for the most part, disappeared. So now what we've got is high-class, high-rise apartments, very expensive hotels and motels, expensive cafes and restaurants. We also got a piece of modern architecture that looks like the public works or something of that sort down in, near the Hyatt Regency. Now, if you're in the hiring hall and you don't get a job that morning, then ain't much point hanging around. You just head for home. So it's affected the community a lot, yeah. And when you are working, there's not, again, that at lunchtime or what have you, the cafes have disappeared. Much more frequent now, the guy will pack a lunch from home because there is no restaurant.
Perhaps at no other time is the personality of the waterfront more clearly split than when the noon hour is signaled from the ferry building. The symbols of hard physical work and tradition are disappearing along the Embarcadero, and the totems of privilege and pleasure appear to be the wave of the future.
I ain't anything against tourists. You know, it's tourists. And the people drifting over from Montgomery Street or the financial section, they run down to the to waterfront now and have very fashionable lunch.
Changed a lot from the days we started working here 28 years ago. At one time, you could go into a restaurant and have a 50-cent sandwich, and now you can do it. And you had a lot of longshoremen. You worked with them side by side, the tugboat men and the longshoremen. And now it's all different. People have their own ways, and it's really changed a lot.
Captain Gil Gonzalez, skipper of the Crowley Maritime Corporation's tugboat, Sea Viking. He got his operating papers at 17. He spent all his working life at the wheels of tugs.
It's a hard life. It's not an easy life. You get up all times of night. You get up in the middle of the morning. And wintertime it's cold, foggy, and so it's a different type of breed, and you have to like it to work it here. And a lot of people, I know a lot of deckhands we had, they just couldn't take it. 1 week was enough for them.
The crew of the Sea Viking is of that different breed. Deckhand Bill Enos, 14 years a professional ball player, 7 years an outfielder for the San Francisco Seals. Came to the Embarcadero in 1955 and has been working the tugs ever since.
Well, when I first came here about 23 years ago, this whole waterfront used to be loaded with ships from all over the world. And you go down and walk down Embarcadero and you see people from all different countries off these different foreign ships. But now that docks are disappearing, the shipping is not coming in here anymore.
Deckhand Louis Woman never saw the sea till he was 12 and joined the crew of a fishing boat in his native Peru. 4 years as a fisherman, 2 more in the Chilean Navy, 4 years as a harpooner on a whaling ship. 2 decades on San Francisco Bay.
When I come in here, it was 1957. The first time I come in the fisherman wharf with the fishing boat, it was beautiful. You know, I see a lot of ships in the docks. Everybody is live happy. Now everybody is going away now because no more ships around. All the ships moved now to Oakland.
Most of your shipping is moved over to Oakland, APL, Matson, and from the city. Naturally, it's not much cargo you got there.
You see 3, 4 ships, maybe in a week, and that's it, except for those going into repair yards.
Yeah, before you are busy. Now everything is dead. I don't know what will happen.
The docks are getting old. They have to be repaired. And a lot of work to be involved in it.
The only way they're going to do anything with that, where they're going to make money, is put in the condominiums, the office buildings, and a nice passenger terminal.
Well, it'll probably look like Miami Beach with all the hotels and all the parks and stuff.
does she know where she's sitting? Lady of means making news. Can she be aware of old seaman's stare? Like gaslight through yesterday's booze. Once only whores hung out on the wharves. That's how we got his tattoos. Tattoos still remain, but what was her name, and who lost the game? Embarcadero Blues. And stop your wailing. Come on home and breathe the break of day, and lead the way back to the mainland. Tell me of life on Frisco Bay.
In the old days, there was an extraordinary variety in the work to begin with. I mean, many, many different kinds of cargo. The cargoes were legion in number, and the hoists were always different. The ship was always different. The gear was always different. There was never a dull moment. You had to go from minute to minute almost, figuring out what you wanted to do and how you wanted to do it. Initiative, a lot of innovation, skill and experience played a big part in it. And you was always re-rigging that gear for a special hoist, or, you know, either loading or discharging or what have you. Well, by comparison, a container operation is the hoist is always the same, the cargo unit is always the same. Once you've been around for a little bit, the ship is always the same. There's absolutely no difference. And it really means that the work has been highly routinized as a result of modern technology.
The spawn of modern technology. Ships that hardly look like ships. Decks crammed with container boxes. Cargo that is rolled directly aboard giant floating warehouses 5 decks deep. It's a technology that strikes deep into the working lives of Herb Mills and his brother working men.
And it's just simply on modern operations, you don't have the opportunity to express that sense of brotherhood or community with the brothers through your work. And that is a big change. That is a great big change.
Change in the ways of working. Change in the ways of living. Change in the very feel and texture of the Embarcadero. This wharf was once a place of labor for perhaps 200 longshoremen at a time. Now it's a place of pleasure for 35,000 visitors a day. And there's work here too, for cooks, shopkeepers, waiters, 2,000 of them.
Well, we've got a great complex on the water. It's a fun place to be, and apparently Northern Californians are taking advantage of it, which we designed it that way.
There's no stronger symbol of change on the Embarcadero than the developer of Pier 39, former airline pilot and restaurant chain owner Warren Simmons.
It's a great place for families to come with their kids. You have that Palace of Fun Arts, the merry-go-round. We have 12 fast food stands. We've got these 23 wonderful full-service dining restaurants, all of them with a view of the bay. Plus, we built a marina for 350 boats. The boats create the atmosphere. We've tried to make it clean, almost sterile clean like Disneyland. Security. We have 35 people in turn-of-the-century uniforms, so people know it's a secure place to be. Down late at night, early in the morning, and you're safe down here.
A lifelong San Franciscan, Warren Simmons is a man with his own vision of the Embarcadero of the future.
Well,
If I had my way, the Embarcadero from here to Ghirardelli would be closed. It'd be made a park, a promenade. That's what should happen. Let's make it into a beautiful promenade with planters and benches. Look at our pretty North Point Park out there. Isn't that a beautiful addition to the city of San Francisco? Why can't we do that all along the waterfront? You know, the ferry building is now up for development. It has to be something that will attract the crowds, attract the populace to enjoy our beautiful waterfront. Well, I would like to see marinas down there. You could put in 10,000 slips and you'd fill them up the first year. I think hotels on the waterfront would be great. Where the area isn't needed for shipping. And shipping has first priority on our San Francisco waterfront. I believe in it, I advocate it, and everyone who understands the waterfront knows shipping comes first.
North of the Bay Bridge, you don't have the room for a container operation. I mean, unless you're going to talk about knocking down Telegraph Hill. That ain't too likely, I guess. So you're not going to have containers there, no matter what. I don't care who's running the port. Certainly north of the Bay Bridge, I don't expect any ships to be coming in there. Maybe there'd be a passenger terminal.
There is a passenger terminal of sorts, old, faded, dusty. But Pier 35 does bring an hour of glamour to the Embarcadero on sailing day. The luxury cruise ship Royal Viking Star is about to cast off for South America. Departing passengers cast hardly a glance at the ship docked at the next pier, one of two liners that won't sail on this day. The once stately Mariposa and her sister ship, the Monterey, are grounded on the shoals of bankruptcy by the financial failure of Pacific Far East lines. The great engines that once throbbed below decks have been stilled. The final entry has been made in the captain's log. The Monterey and the Mariposa are ghost ships. But Georgina Barber remembers when the band played all night, and there were toasts to each new port on these liners and others like them.
I love those boats, just like they were some relative of mine. They're special because they had a boat that they were good to the passengers. They had a swimming pool, they had hairdressing, they had massages, and they had dancing and food all hours of the night. Call to your room, service brought in. They treated us like queens and good care, good service, room service, table service, whatever. I've met people on this ship that was from all over the world. They loved it. And that should have been a cherished thing, never to let go. I loved it. I loved it. And it's sad. It's sad because a boat like this, if she's getting old, then let's replace her with something better and fly the American flag.
Today, only luxury liners sailing under foreign flags with foreign crews can afford the high cost of seagoing labor. Except for a few passenger-carrying freighters, the United States is out of the passenger business. And it takes an old-timer to relive that classic American odyssey, running away to sea.
Well, originally, I ran away from home, and I caught a ship, just as a bellhop. I just got started that way, and once I got started, I couldn't stop.
Norman McIntyre has been shipping out since he was 17. As an engineman on merchant ships, he's circled the world many times.
If you have a wandering foot, which I had, you always want to see someplace far beyond where you are. San Francisco, it's the mystique about it. I know that sounds phony, but it isn't. San Francisco has been noted as a port city, as a glamorous city. This used to be a working waterfront. And to my estimation now, it has become just a tourist trap. From beyond the ferry building, way beyond the ferry building, all the way up to where Fisherman's Wharf is now, it was all ships. Mostly the whole Embarcadero here then was either seamen or longshoremen, period. We had our own places to go into, and most of the time we didn't even venture into town. Seamen have a tendency to seek their own. Wherever there's other seamen, that's where they'll congregate. So some of the little bars along the Embarcadero, they were all seamen or longshoremen. We got along together, so that's where we stayed.
At least one such place still exists, as it has for almost half a century at Pier 23. By day, a cafe catering to seafaring men, and by night, a saloon where merchant seamen and longshoremen mix with teamsters and tycoons, steam fitters and secretaries, and somehow, most of the tourists never seem to find their way to Pier 23. When the fog rolls in and Jack, Jive, Schaefer, and his rhythm rascals are laying down a solid beat, it's almost as if nothing has changed along the waterfront of San Francisco.
Embarcadero Blues. Heave away and drop the railing. Shouldn't be so far away from home. Stop your wailing. Now you've made a brand new home.
You know, my grandfather, I'll give you an example, fished here in the bay, herring, crabs, and everything, just like, you know, your grandfather, Frank, Bert. Here's the thing, we all began here, our grandmothers, our mothers came down here, brought the food down, cooked it here. This is how the wharf began.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching the western anchor of the Embarcadero, historic Fisherman's Wharf, where you'll see the picturesque little boats that supply the world-famous seafood restaurants of San Francisco with their daily fresh catch from the sea.
I've been here all my life. I like Fisherman's Wharf. I'm fishing out here, but I get this kind of disgusted. The wharf is so crowded with tourists and gift shops and all that. And we don't have a fighting chance.
You'll see authentic and colorful old-time fishermen tending their boats and bending their nets in old-world tradition.
Because they're most catering to the outside people that are coming in. You know, the tourists that are coming in. I think the whole waterfront is getting that way.
It's just a tourist trap.
We'll take a 20-minute stop here so you can experience the atmosphere of one of the city's most popular tourist attractions.
We'll have twice the fun. Now, away!
You'll be walking beside seamen from many ports of the world, hard-muscle dock workers and old salts who have sailed the 7 seas. But don't worry, folks, there's no danger of being shanghaied.
Where are we going at this day and age? Looks like this is all disappearing. Here we got the fishing.
The first catch of the day has been unloaded at Pier 45. John Aliotta of Marine Reef Fisheries takes a coffee break with his friends.
The question is, what direction are we going in? Are we going backwards?
You know, the wharf has changed. There's a lot of people that want to work here. There's a lot of boats that want to come in here. But the facilities, what we really lack is the proper facilities for the fishermen that work out here.
We believe the port, their intentions are very honorable. They're working towards this direction. But, you know, talk doesn't do things. What we want is action, and we want it as soon as possible, because we keep saying, well, next year, and next year, and next year, but this is this year. Let's get something going on right now.
For 20 years to put a breakwall here.
This is what we're hoping for.
It's
really what we need here. A breakwater is going to create a lagoon for you. A nice, safe place for your boat to tie up.
Carlos San Felipe, native San Franciscan, fisherman since the age of 9. His boat, the Ada Ana, a $45,000 investment, holds 20 tons of fish. Carlos' mate, Joe Messina, an immigrant to the United States at age 8. For the past 48 years, a fisherman. Most of the old-timers around Fisherman's Wharf trace their parentage to 3 or 4 villages around Palermo, Sicily. Joe and Carlo are no exceptions.
I can remember back when I was a very young boy, kid, with my dad. He used to bring me down Fisherman's Wharf. And he used to introduce me to all his old-timer fishermen, you know. And at them days, you know, things weren't like they are today. And it was all like a big group, a family. And they call it paisanos, you know, which would be friends. And more than friends, we're like a relation to one another, too.
We came from the old country. The first time I seen my dad, I'd never seen him before. So I met him at the ferry. He met us at the ferry building, my mother and I. I couldn't speak a word of English. Of course, being a native from the old country, you know, from Sicily, it was all new to me.
They started with from scratch. The Fisherman's Wharf was just practically nothing. But there was plenty of boats, plenty of small boats. So there were crab fishermen boats and salmon trawlers, salmon fishermen. Most of them were all mostly Italian fishermen. We had a few outsiders that worked with us, and they got to be in one of our family, into our family, you know. And they got to stay with us fishing and work with us so long that they even looked like one of us Italians.
The whole waterfront here, the whole scene is different today than it was. If people that, let's say people that came from the old country that passed away when I came, if they should come down these streets today, they wouldn't know it. It's that much different.
Yeah, I'd like to see it improve a little bit better for the commercial fishermen to have better facilities for their fishing boats and keep it as a commercial fisherman's. After all, this is a fisherman's wharf. This is what they call it. It's no tourist wharf or for these yacht boats.
My dad, when he came here, he made a living here fishing with his uncles, and it was his way of life. He loved it. He liked it. And my uncles, and all of them, all the other friends of ours that were fishermen, that was their life. And that's the life of people today that are fishing. I like it. It's something that's in your blood.
Mostly fishermen were how it originally started as a commercial fisherman. They'd like to keep it that way if it's possible. But you have a lot of politicians and big shots that I don't know what they have in their mind about trying to change this wharf into some kind of a yacht.
This is really our aim, to have boats like the Ada Anna, Carlos Sanfilippo's boat, bring fish to the market. This tourists love to see because they know just how fresh we're bringing it into the market, what is being done.
You'll note fresh crab being cooked before your very eyes, and perhaps you'll enjoy a walkaway seafood cocktail.
I understand there's 3 million people come down to Fisherman's Wharf every year.
And there are plenty of novelties and souvenirs available for you to take home to Aunt Minnie, the kids, and the folks next door. A little something to give them the flavor, the feeling, the salty tang of the waterfront of old San Francisco.
My family isn't in the restaurant business, but they're in the fishing industry. You need the restaurants as well as we need the boats. The boats need the restaurants and vice versa. We work hand in hand.
We just want to be heard that we need this industry to create work and to give us the facilities to get the boats back into San Francisco where it all began. This is important.
Of course, the sea has always been important to San Francisco and to its people. It was from the sea that the first gold rush boomers came to build a sleepy village into an instant city. In 1849 alone, 777 ships tied up in San Francisco. Almost half were deserted by their crews who struck out for the gold fields. By 1915, when the Panama Canal was open, 10,000 sailing vessels had beat their way around the Horn to San Francisco. It's an era not forgotten aboard the Balclutha, moored at the Embarcadero next to Fisherman's Wharf. In the captain's quarters, 2 men who have sailed before the mast. Henry Bramer, who shipped out from his native England to spend all his working life at sea and first sailed through the Golden Gate half a century ago. Alex Widerstrom, a native San Franciscan who helped restore the Balclutha, defied a family seafaring tradition for a career on land. But as a teenager, he knew the rise and fall of a sailing vessel's decks.
I was only 16 years old, and I was going to Polytechnic High School, and my father, he thought that it would be, I would get a lot of better education by going to sea. And he was a sea captain, and he wanted me to follow the sea. It was in April of 1919, and I signed on as cabin boy on the ship Star of France with the Alaska Packers Association. They were engaged in the canning of salmon, and they left here in April, and there's nothing like being on a sailing vessel under full sail. You don't hear any noise or anything. You just hear the straining of the ropes and the wind going through the rigging, and the ship pitches and rolls. It don't roll much because once you get the wind in the sails steady the ship, but you get a little bit of pitching. It's a wonderful experience, and it's something that you will never see again today.
When I got to be 15 and a half years old, my elder brother came home in the ship, big four-master. I think the name was the Benares, and he took me back to Liverpool when he was ready to go, and took me on the ship he was on, and he learnt me all kinds of sailing ship work there, seamanship, making knots and spices, and doing one thing, knowing the names of different parts of the ship, and the names of the ropes, up aloft, and the sails. That was in 1903, month of May. The seaman, he starts as an apprentice, and the apprentices are all ordinary seamen or deck boys. He does lots of work that is go up aloft and over all the boat lines, that is pulling the slack up and over the sails. There is danger up aloft. Sometimes when you're out of the trade winds, you've got to watch yourself when you're up there, because all of a sudden the wind changes and the sails begin to flap. And the sails flap, and if it hits you, down you go. Knocks you right off the yard. And the result is a dead man or a dead boy. I came to San Francisco from Honolulu, 14 and a half days from Honolulu to San Francisco. When we got to San Francisco, they discharged the cargo of sugar. That was 1909. They were loaded with ships, most of them sailing ships, on the Australian run, on the Wine Island run, on the South Sea Island run, South American run. These northern piers and the wharfs, they were lined up with ships, both sides of the pier and alongside the wharf. And the result was there was lots of work for longshoremen, lots of work for sailors in 1909.
And there was always a lot of activity, and always you could look along the piers, and you could see always the tall masts of sailing vessels, and a lot of horses and drays. Down at the end of Market Street where the ferry building, that's changed dramatically. I remember the streetcars coming down there. Down a little bit further, there was the auto ferries that took you across the bay to Oakland. And I can remember all the different ships that came in. Well, I think it's a shame the way they've let the waterfront deteriorate and taken away a lot of San Francisco. Very few passenger ships, they do come in here, but not many of them. And most of our freight and everything is taken over to Oakland by containers. And when I went to sea, there was no such a thing as containers. And it's changed. The whole waterfront has changed to me.
I think it looks like as if there's a funeral on. Everything naked. It's quiet. There's nothing doing nowhere. Everything is dead.
He remembers 60 years past. Cargo moved by the vanishing mast. Time's cutting through him like a knife. Silver blade clear as fishermen drying their nets, sailors drowning regrets, workers who paid heavy dues, Embarcadero Blues.
Yesterday hangs heavy along the Embarcadero, among the broken wharves and the derelict piers shattered by time. At one end, the Embarcadero is anchored as tenaciously to the past as the museum relics restored to remind the city of glory days along its waterfront. And at the other, it drowses in the afternoon sun, waiting for an uncertain future. In between, San Francisco's front yard is littered with the debris of promises that failed, opportunities that died, dreams that foundered in the tides of changing times. 5:30 a.m., Pier 9. The day has started for Captain Gil Gonzalez and the crew of the tugboat Sea Viking. What they will do during the next 3 hours tells much of what has happened to the Embarcadero. Their assignment is to rendezvous with the Sealand McLean, a container ship which has just cleared the Golden Gate. Take off the pilot and assist the ship into port. She's 997 feet, riding low with a full cargo from Yokohama. She's headed for Oakland. For tugboat engineer Art Lawrence, it's a familiar story.
Oakland has everything now, and it was only natural move for all the shipping companies to move to Oakland. San Francisco doesn't have the open space for containerized operation. They don't have a direct railhead. They don't have industry to serve. So Oakland, they just got in there, they built, and they have everything right there for them.
As dawn cracks across the East Bay Hills, the Sealand McLean is secured beneath the giant container cranes that line the Oakland estuary. Captain Gonzalez has already received his next assignment by shortwave. Pick up another ship and help her into port. This time to one of the wharves that stretch like fingers into the bay from San Francisco's Embarcadero. The Rio Abacan out of Argentina with general cargo for Pier 29, a much smaller vessel, 450 feet, less than half the size of the container ship that docked across the bay. The Rio Abacan is the only freighter that will discharge cargo into San Francisco on this day. Captain Gil Gonzalez.
When the state had it, they had a pretty good waterfront. The state used to take care of all the docks, keep it up and all that. And when the city took over, they just evidently couldn't just keep up with it.
What the city couldn't keep up with, or at least didn't keep up with, was the change in maritime technology. Today, only a few ships from South America, Indonesia, and the South Seas trade carry break bulk cargo. That is, cargo unloaded and discharged with cargo nets, pallets, and slings. And that leaves the Embarcadero in the backwash of world shipping trade, and it also leaves most of the surviving warehouses and wharves at San Francisco's front door shuttered and empty. Only ghosts stir the dust and cobwebs, specters of 1,000 long-ago seamen and longshoremen. This is where they shipped out, where they sweated for a living, where they organized and fought for the special independence the waterfront stood for. Herb Mills remembers.
There was a lot of freedom on the waterfront in the sense of, the individual man deciding how he wanted to structure his life. I mean, when he wanted to work, where he wanted to work, what job he wanted to work. Then I think just inherently, a lot of men found the work interesting. And in strange say, hard as it was, dirty as it was, dangerous as it was, rewarding. If you pardon the expression, I mean, you hardly dare use it these days, but the moral dimension of that existence and being a good union man and being a good worker, that was a factor in it. And you could maintain the dignity that, you happen to be able to rustle up, such as it was, and no employer could take it from you. That was, I think, important.
There are still places, mostly well beyond the Embarcadero's end, where the hard hat and the union button remain traditional symbols of acceptance. This is the hidden waterfront, the part the tourist never sees and most San Franciscans hardly know exists. Yet it has been here since long before the turn of the century. Ships have been built in what are now the Bethlehem yards for at least 65 years. It has the largest dry dock on the West Coast. Depending on the workload, between 700 and 1,200 people draw paychecks here. And there are others at Hunter's Point yards nearby. With union jurisdiction from here to the Canadian border, these are the highest paid shipyard workers in the world. That fact may explain why few ships are built in San Francisco today. Most of the work is repair, maintenance, and barge construction. But it is this southern end of the waterfront, far from the Embarcadero, that seems to hold the future of the city's maritime industry, because only here does San Francisco have the modern facilities for handling cargo.
I think in time that the business will be moving towards the southern waterfront with this 72-acre facility.
Ed David, port director of San Francisco.
Pier 80, and ultimately the southern waterfront is where maritime belongs in San Francisco. And in the mid-60s, when we started losing business to the Port of Oakland, we did not have any container cranes. They had 11. We now have 6, and they have 17. So we're gaining in our capacity or ability to handle container ships. We probably are in about 5th place on the Pacific coast. Long Beach, Los Angeles, Seattle, and Oakland are larger than San Francisco. This particular facility, Pier 94-96, was built at a cost of $42 million. It could not stand on its own. We recognize the importance of maritime to San Francisco, and we know we must subsidize it with commercial development on the northern waterfront. We need the commercial development to subsidize the maritime activities.
The subsidy to bring maritime business here to the south waterfront, says Ed David, will come from commercial development along the Embarcadero.
There'll be a mix of all kinds of commercial development. I think something like the Warren Simmons project, perhaps some hotels, office buildings, but I think generally they will not be built over water. They'll be built on the backland. At the Fisherman's Wharf area, we are hoping to have a breakwater, which we anticipate will be constructed about 1984. When that is done, we hope to attract commercial fishing, have fish processing on Pier 45. Coming south of that, we are going to continue to use Pier 35 as our passenger terminal. We have a very attractive break bulk facility, and there is still some break bulk business at Pier 27-29. The one that we are working very diligently on today is the rehabilitation and restoration of the ferry building. It would be a mix of commercial and office space. We're presently building a promenade between the ferry building and Pier 24. Here we're going to have an expanse of open space that will run about 5 blocks. What I'd like to see is here on the southern waterfront, we have this facility of 72 acres with the possibility of expanding it by another 100 acres. This combined with Pier 80 and all of the facilities south of the 3rd Street Bridge, I would like to see as the maritime port. In the northern waterfront, I think there'll still be a use for some break bulk facilities, but I think it should be a mix of commercial and some open space.
Thus, the Embarcadero as San Franciscans once knew it, a place of ships and hard-working men, seems destined to become the realm of corporate business and of the pleasure seeker.
Here it is, the penny souvenir machine of San Francisco. Engraves a picture of the cable car and the Golden Gate Bridge on one side of a penny. 25 cents, 5 for $1. 9 out of 10 times on the back of your dark-colored pennies, you can still see the heads or tails stretched on the back. If you want to see that it's a penny, use your dark-colored pennies. If you want it made into copper jewelry, such as a necklace, bracelet, or keychain, I already have it made for $1. Engraves that whole picture there of San Francisco on a penny, 25 cents.
Does he know where he's walking? The tourist in white summer shoes. As land-bound feet walk old Jackson Street, Embarcadero Blues.
traditions of the Embarcadero were forged in the sweat of hard work, in the holds and on the decks of 10,000 ships. And those traditions, like the ships and the salty men who worked them, are fading from the waterfront. Soon they will be no more than shadows, scarcely missed by the promoters, the tourists, the businessmen, the pleasure seekers who never knew them. Today, the sagging wharves and the silent pilings stand as symbols of a question that it may be too late to answer. What is being gained and what has been lost on San Francisco's Embarcadero? Ken Fox is a poet, member of the Waterfront Writers, all working longshoremen, all published authors.
While working here at Pier 80, I began thinking of what has been happening to the San Francisco front. We used to work over on the north side, which is known as Fisherman's Wharf. I wrote a poem today called Tour Guide. History shows not long ago great ships used to dock here. What we are standing on was once called a finger pier. When they shut the docks down, San Francisco became a carnival town. Now you can see what a longshoreman looked like in the Wax Museum. And they have an exhibit of freight at a restaurant called Pier 38. And for your further edification, they have a show called Immigration at the Pier of All Nations. Now I want you all to look around, for you're standing on hallowed ground. It was here in 34 that the Great Longshore Union was born. And there's a model of their hiring hall down on the mall. There's a lot more to see, so don't go away. The belly dancers are free. Have a nice day in the city Herb Cain calls Baghdad by the Bay. Embarcadero Blues.